Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together. Starting now.
Welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I'm Melanie, your host, and this is the place where we talk about all things clutter. Today, I have Kelly Lutman with me. Kelly has been fascinated by the power of food ever since she helped resolve her son's ADHD by simply changing what he ate. A health coach certified in applied functional medicine, Kelly firmly believes that symptoms are the body's cry for help and that the body can heal when provided the building blocks it needs. She meets her clients where they are, helps them understand what is happening in their body, and guides them in identifying the changes that will help them experience the vitality they were missing. Okay, so we've talked before on more than one occasion, and I feel like this is the first time that I heard that your foray into this was helping your son with his ADHD. So tell us more about that.
Was what lit the spark, let's say. My original training was in accounting. I was a CPA and, working along, and then started having a family. And when I had my second one, I really felt like I needed to be home with him. And this is the son that changed my life in multiple ways. We all have one, And as we started homeschooling, we began homeschooling because he learned to read at age 4 and would not have fit in a normal classroom that way. So we started homeschooling. But by the time he was 7, 8 years old, I was beginning to see that things weren't functioning the normal way, the way I expected. He couldn't sit at the table doing math and not keep dropping his pencil and just having distracting moments so much. I happened to listen to a Focus on the Family panel discussion of parents with kids that had ADHD. And my son had never been in a classroom, so I didn't have a teacher telling me this may be the case for him. But listening to them describing their kids, I was like, that's what we're dealing with. I am most sure that's what it is. But I didn't want to get him diagnosed and put on medication. I wanted to find out what was going on. Why? Why was he this way and not the other two? There was a difference there. And so I started at the library because this was back before the internet, a long time ago, and found a book by Dr. Benjamin Feingold, who was a pediatric allergist, who wrote the book, Why Your Child is Hyperactive. And his theory was that a lot of hyperactivity was actually allergic reaction to artificial colors and flavors in food. Artificial colors and flavors are generally preserved by salicylates, which are also found naturally in fruits and vegetables. And so he had a 2-week protocol to fully remove those from the diet and see what the body did in response. So I decided we're going to do this as a family. I'm not going to short order cook, and I'm not going to tell this one you can't eat this, but your brothers can. That would not go well. So we eliminated those foods. It was a very long grocery store trip that first time because I had to read all the labels and find out the places it was hiding. But in 2 weeks' time, he was a different child. I mean, night and day difference in his behavior. I was amazed. All we did was change our food. And look at the power it had for him. And so, it was a no-brainer. We were going to continue that. We didn't starve. We didn't suffer. We had other ways. Dr. Feingold was wonderful in that he provided alternative recipes for a lot of the things we were used to eating. So we had ways to cope with it. But we continued, and his improvement continued. But he could go down the street to play with a friend, and he wasn't policing what he was getting at a friend's house. But I could tell as soon as he walked in the door, responded that quickly in his body. He would walk in the door, and I could just tell he was balancing his way in, kind of like Tigger, And it just fascinated me that all we did was change our food, and this was the power it had on him. He was unique in that area. But for the sake of the family dynamic, we continued that program, and I started researching. I started wanting to know, what else does food do? what else does it make a difference? Because I grew up, I was a child as processed foods and fast foods and things like that were just getting started. And it was normal for me, but I didn't realize what was affecting us from the ingredients in our food. And I continued research. I experimented on my family. They all survived. But once I finished homeschooling the last of them through high school, I went back to school for me to train first as a health coach and then a few years later in applied functional medicine because I saw the power of food and lifestyle transitions to heal the body.
That's an amazing story. I mean, you make me think we all see the reaction to sugar, not just in kids. I know I'm going to be wired, and I also know I'm going to crash. I think we also know that most of the food that's out there that has been processed in some way has either something in it we don't need or is missing the thing that we really do need.
Exactly.
Right.
When the processed food started back in the 50s, the food industry said, we're going to save the housewife from hours in the kitchen cooking breakfast and lunch and dinner. And we're going to provide foods that will cook easily and quickly. And all that sounded wonderful if you were the woman who didn't want to be stuck in the kitchen all day. But in order to make that food that could be frozen and cooked quickly or sit in a package on the grocery store shelf, they took out nutrients, things that would cause the food to spoil, and they substituted chemicals and flavorings and sugar and fat. I grew up on margarine because they had come out with that study that said eating fat makes you fat. And so margarine was the thing that was going to rescue us. But what they realize now is that was not the case. It was a faulty study that they based all that on. And when they take fat out of food, they lose flavor. And so they add in the chemicals and sugars and things to make it taste good, but they also engineer it to make it addictive. And that's what gets us with the processed food is when something advertises once you pop, you can't stop. They've figured it out. They've engineered it that way. And therefore, I'm not popping because I know I won't be able to fight it.
So tell me when this happened with your son. What years or decade was this?
He was born in 86, so this was the early 90s. I used fast food or processed food, hamburger helper, all the things because I was homeschooling my kids all day. And then I needed something quick for dinner. And so I was guilty of that. I learned to change the way I was feeding my family. And we had to break some habits in the process, but it is doable. And the body responds and says, oh, give me more.
Right. So, let me ask. Oh, I have so many questions.
Okay.
Really. But I just have to collect my thoughts. So, one of the things that I'm hearing is that so many of us just don't know what's in the food that we're eating and how it's affecting us. And I think about the experience that you had because in the 80s, my mother was diagnosed wheat intolerant. No one knew what that meant. And so I was that kid who I came home from sleepaway camp that summer and there was no bread, no pasta. The cereals had changed. There were no pretzels. And she needed to do that for her health. And her health changed astronomically. But I found myself sleeping over at friends' houses all the time so I can get some good food, or going to the diner with my friends so I can get some good food. And now there's all these gluten-free options in the last 20-ish years. All of a sudden, this stuff is available. And we're talking about food that's highly processed. And so the reason she got so healthy is that all of a sudden she was eating potatoes and rice and protein and vegetables and fruit and wasn't eating all of the other, I'm going to call it crap. So the same thing happened again. It's just I can finally have one of my favorite stories about my mom was she had surgery in the early 90s. I don't remember what it was. But they ask you to fill out the nutrition form. And she said that she had a wheat allergy. It was like the best way she could describe it, hoping that nutrition department at the hospital would understand. And they sent breakfast and they sent rye bread. And my mother was like, I said that I'm wheat free. And they said, yeah. So we sent you rye bread, not wheat bread. The nutritionist actually had to come up and have a conversation with my mom. My mother's diagnosis did not come from a regular doctor. It came from a holistic health doctor who, like, she walked in the room and just by what her skin looked like, he knew that there was an allergy and went through like very little to figure out exactly what it was. And so for me, seeing that, nutrition will always be a game changer. So talk to me when clients come to you.
Mhm.
What are they looking for? Like, what kind of help are they looking for?
Usually the people that are coming to me have maybe been to multiple doctors, knowing something's off and not getting answers. And I'm one that will listen. I take the time to listen, to value their observations, to help walk through the process of figuring it out. That's one of the things that I do as a functional medicine coach. But the other people that come to me are those that have chronic disease, IBS, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune, and they're just tired of being told you're going to be on this medicine for the rest of your life. They're like, isn't there something else we can do? And I say, yes, there sure is. And we can walk through the process of helping your body heal so that you no longer have this issue. Type 2 diabetes, doctors just put on medication. They really rarely talk to you about your diet as being key in changing that, but it is vital to make changes and your body can restore so that you no longer have diabetes. Same with IBS, same with autoimmune. Amazing to me, and what fuels me to continue. I mean, after my husband is retired, I'm still working because I want to see people well. I want to see people able to enjoy their later years and not feel tied to medications and a diagnosis that limits their freedom.
Sure, sure. I mean, you're speaking my language when it comes to IBS because I think we've spoken before how
Mhm.
I have IBS, but I also know how to keep it under control. I
Yep.
also know what's going to set it off, and one is nutrition and the other is stress. If I am managing my stress, I'm going to kitten yoga. Everybody, I went to kitten yoga last night. you know, Meditating, eating well, getting sleep, all of those things are going to contribute to a healthy digestive system. When I'm out of whack, my system's out of whack. And when my system is out of whack, I am out of whack. And that's a hard cycle to get out of. The
Mhm.
thing I appreciate about the type 2 diabetes is, I was a weight loss coach for 20 years. I was encouraging people to eat healthy and move more for a very long period of time. And it's amazing how quickly moving more and eating better can change your A1C to the point that you are either no longer pre-diabetic or not even insulin dependent anymore for someone who was type 2 diabetic. That it's not about the medicine. It is about how you're fueling your bloodstream and everything else. So I appreciate you having said that. So one of the things we said that we wanted to talk about were like fads and myths and weird things like that. And I've been around diets for a long time. Grapefruit diet, cabbage soup diet, carnivore diet, eat for your blood type, which I didn't do. My father did, but I read the
Mhm.
book.
Mhm.
And I don't want to call everything a fad. I don't want to negate anything that has worked for other people, but we've heard a lot, like you said before, go fat free, gluten free. Gluten free is for people who have a problem with gluten. It is not, a way to master sustained weight loss for everybody. So
Mhm.
do you have some favorite things that people come to you and say that they did to lose weight, knowing that that probably wasn't supporting them?
Well, my favorite not is the doctor said I need to eat more, exercise more, and eat less. And I always ask, well, how's that working for you? Because it's not that simple. It's not that simple. There are hormones at play that are your body's operating system. And the hormones can be affected by what you are thinking, just the same as what you are doing with your body and what you are feeding your body. So there's a whole lot more in that process than just the simple eat less and exercise more. I do have people come and I will ask, what have you tried? What have you done before? And so many will say, oh, I tried Whole30, I did keto, I did this and that. And I'll ask, what did you notice when you were doing each of those? Because I don't see one diet as being the answer for everybody. We are all individual. We are each unique. Even if you had identical twins, there would be things that are slightly different between the two of them. But we all hear especially the celebrities talk about the diet they use to lose all this weight or whatever they were doing. And we think, oh, well, I should try that. But it may not fit your body. I know people who like to eat keto, but I question whether keto is sustainable long term because you're concentrating on eating protein and fat and very little carb, but very little fiber. And fiber is what feeds the microbiome. So your gut bugs, which we need, we are symbiotic with them, suffer if you go long term on a diet like that, or even carnivore. There's not as much fiber in carnivore.
I'm going to interrupt because what I know for me, and again, this is like not everything works for everybody. I know that if I ate keto or carnivore or, just, more protein, less carbs, my
Mm-hmm.
system would shut down. I would absolutely be unable to operate my digestive system. If you tell me that I can't have fruit and whole grains, I know for my body, it would not work. And it's not, I wouldn't lose weight. It's, I wouldn't feel good, which means I wouldn't move more. So forget the calories in, calories out thing. There would be no calories out because I would be sluggish and uncomfortable and
Mm-hmm.
feel physically heavy. And so I think it's really important. Like, yes, we should all come to a coach, a great coach like you, but sometimes we have to sit down and ask ourselves those questions first, because who knows my body better than me?
Well, and if you don't ask yourself first, I'm going to ask you because you're the one living in your body. I know what works for me, but I need to know what works for you. And even in the process of coaching, as we make adjustments and shifts, I'm constantly asking, what do you notice? What is your body feeling like in the process of this? Because we can't just do labs and spit out a report that says do this, this, and this. It's not that simple. We need to find out what fits the individual. Sometimes I go by blood type. Sometimes I use some of the blood type diet concepts as starting places to explore. But I also, in intakes, the intake information I ask from my clients is, what body parts have been removed? If you have no gallbladder, keto is not your friend because the gallbladder collects bile and releases a bolus into your small intestine that helps to emulsify fats. And if you are eating 30 to 40% of your diet is fat and you have no ability to get that bolus, you're not going to do well. You may feel okay for a few days, but there's going to come a crash. And so I do not recommend that at all for patients or clients that I'm working with that have lost certain parts that are going to affect their digestion.
Having lost my appendix doesn't play a role in that, right?
Having lost the appendix is now believed, at least in functional circles, to be more a library store of microbiome to replenish after damage. So losing your appendix means you don't have the replenishment access to re-inoculate, so to speak. So maybe after illness, you may need to work on more probiotic support to re-inoculate you.
Okay, this is so interesting. This is my podcast, so we're going to talk about me for a little bit because my brain is like, what happened was I am told that I had chronic, not acute appendicitis. I had been suffering for a year. My stomach was so distended. I was uncomfortable. It was like akin to an ulcer, but nothing was showing up on an endoscopy. And I was at my healthiest weight, but didn't look like it because my stomach, and here, take omeprazole. It would make it feel better. I would remove caffeine and sugar and chocolate and peppers and tomatoes and the other nightshades, and then I would feel really good, and then I would slip. And I went to the urgent care. And I said, oh my God, the pain here, it's so terrible. It's so terrible. And he pressed where the appendix is, and I about jumped off the table. But here's the thing. This doctor at the urgent care said to me, well, at your age, I was 40. Okay. I was 40. He said, at your age, it's unlikely that it's the appendix. It's more likely that it's a strangulated ovary or something along those lines. I have to send you to the hospital. It's like, I got work to do. Can I go home and then I'll go to the ER? And he said, absolutely not. This is do not collect, go, do not collect $200. I went to the hospital. They did the CAT scan and they were like, great. You're going to be in the hospital for a while because there is such a large abscess on your appendix. We cannot operate safely. So you're going to be on IV antibiotics for a few days and then we'll make some decisions. And 3 days later, it looked great. And they sent me home and they said, some people get an infection, cure the infection, and it's not a problem again. Let's see if you get to keep your appendix. And the doctor, he said, we really don't want to take people's appendix out if we don't absolutely have to. 3 weeks later, I was back in. They had to take the appendix out. But when I tell people that my surgeon to this day says that I had chronic, not acute appendicitis, they don't believe me. They've never heard of it before. But now I'm listening to you and all I'm thinking about is, of course it's chronic if what is affecting it is your diet.
And it's something that I see so often. Obviously, it was chronic because you were feeling the effects of it for all that extended time. But after a while, I bet in some ways it started to feel like your norm, didn't it?
100%. First of all, no one thought it was the appendix because I was feeling the pain like right below the breastplate. Now, I left part of the story out. He said your appendix was up higher than normal. So that could be why you were experiencing pain there. Everyone say, what do you think it is? I don't know. It's right here. But it's too long ago for me to tell you what I was eating and what I wasn't eating during that period of time. But my kids were in school and in sports and in theater and all the things. And I can only imagine that despite being at a healthy weight, we didn't do fast food, but I would say faster food.
Oh, yeah, just trying to make survive in the schedule, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But often we assume that wherever the problem is felt, that's where it is. Excuse me, but it's not always the case. I deal with a lot of people who we identify food sensitivities versus allergies, and I explain the differences in the antibody that's responding. An allergy is an IgE antibody, and I equate that to E for emergency. You're going to know it right now because your lips are swelling, your throat is swelling closed. This is an allergy. You got to move and do something about it. But we get a lot of IgG antibody responses that is gradual. So E for emergency, G for gradual. And you don't catch the symptoms of a sensitivity until a day or two after you ate something. And by then, you're not thinking about what you ate a few days ago that might have been contributing to this. If it's dairy that you are sensitive to, you will often wake up with congestion because dairy builds mucus. And so if you get a lot of stuffiness and you just can't clear it, whether it's in your nose, you get repeated sinus problems, you get repeated ear infections, that is often dairy. And that's also the case for little ones. When little ones get repeated ear infections, check for removing dairy from them. If the sensitivity is for gluten, wheat, like your mom, and gluten is prominent in wheat, but it's in rye and barley and other grains as well, which is why your mom had the issue. It often comes as headache, brain fog, sleepiness, or joint pain. And when you get joint pain, you don't usually think of something you ate, but it can be kind of connected along the way. And so I'm often looking at symptoms and thinking about what else can be at play. A lot of what I do is puzzle work. I put puzzle pieces of symptoms and reports and experiences and what I'm seeing of, their diet logs and things like that to see if we can find what the culprit is, what's going on, and how we can support the body by giving it the building blocks it needs, but also removing the things that are working against it. So yeah, it can be not very clear and easy to find, but when you've got a severe issue, you need someone who's willing to dig in and figure it out.
Sure.
And most doctors don't have the time to do that.
You're in and out. You're in and out.
Hmm.
I have to say, I have a great gastroenterologist, and she's very responsive. We talk a lot, about what I'm eating, not
Hmm.
just, all the other stuff. But it took a while to find that one, you
The right
know.
one.
I also feel lucky in New York City. I think that there's a lot more opportunity out there to find what you need as long as you know what you're looking for just by population. And there are just so many options out there. I mean, when I was a teenager, my mother found herself the doctor that
Hmm.
did that, that made that change for her. Okay. One of the things that you said earlier, though, was when you read the book, Dr. Ben.
Dr. Feingold's Why Your Child is Hyperactive.
Right. One of the things you said was that there were recipes and stuff like that
Hmm.
in there. And I think that's a big thing is great. You've told me either what I should be eating or what I shouldn't be eating. But if that's not the way I've been eating, what do I
How do
do?
I start?
How do I shop? Where do I start? How am I sure that everyone's gonna like it if you're in a house of more than one? So how do you coach your clients when it comes to that?
I believe in crowding out. So if I'm suggesting that something is probably working against you in your diet, unless we have labs that show, a very clear sensitivity to certain foods and things. Someone comes to me not drinking water, but drinking coffee or sodas or other liquids made with water, but not hydrating. I will suggest, okay, let's swap one in the day. Instead of an immediate reversal of what their habit has been, let's just swap one and begin to add in the things that are good for you and crowd out the stuff that is not working so well. As you get in, I find the body is amazing in its ability to communicate, I want more of this. Now, granted, ultra processed food has kind of cornered that because of the chemical manipulation. But when you start introducing vegetables, introducing fruit to your diet that you hadn't been consuming, I believe it's communication from your bacteria in your gut that says, bring it on, give me more. I want more of this. I've worked with clients who wanted to shift their children's diets, and we started by just adding simple things, even if it's something like cut up raw vegetables, and giving them ranch dressing to dip it in. The ranch dressing isn't wonderful, but if it's going to get them to eat a vegetable, we'll start there. Little bitty inroads instead of expecting huge turnarounds. And so I strategize with my clients on how can we make this work? How can we swap this out? How can we bring this in? Sometimes they're like, I haven't a clue. I'm not sure how this tastes. I don't know. I've had to work through taste with my own kids and my own self. And so I will share recipes that I have that are simple because a lot of people these days don't really know how to cook, which is a challenge for us. And so maybe I need to help them find better prepared meals, the fresh meals that they can start by just warming up because that can get it in their body and then their body can start asking for more. Or maybe if they're willing and I can give them some basic videos on how to do this kind of cooking, then I can give them some recipes and some starting places. One of the big things is helping them realize that eating healthy food still tastes good. That's a big one because, a lot of people talk about, I don't want to eat rabbit food. I don't either. I like healthy vegetables and fruit and meats and occasional grains, and I like it to taste good. But taste doesn't have to come from sauces. It can come from herbs. It can come from spices that also have nutritional value for us. So we're playing with a little bit of that also.
I think the other thing is it's how well you've cooked the vegetable. Like if
Mm.
you've overcooked it and it's soggy, it doesn't matter how many sauces, spices, whatever you put on it, it's still going to be gross. And I think it's also helpful to know not just how to cook it, but how you like it. I tell people all the time, I like cooked vegetables. I prefer raw. And if they are cooked, I only want them like blanched because I still want my vegetables to crunch. I
Yeah.
really like the crunch. And you get more of the flavor of that vegetable, necessitating less of the sauces in the whole 9 yards. You said something that I just think is amazing, the idea of crowding in and crowding out items. And I find it very aligned with my approach, and it's setting ridiculously simple goals. If it sounds ridiculous, it's probably the best goal. Adding 1 glass of water a day, or spending 5 minutes cleaning in the bedroom, or just doing one drawer, or just doing one category. The adding activity, and by walking around the block once or twice, not like joining the gym and putting every class on your schedule, because then you accomplish it. It feels good. You see the results. It makes you want to do it again or even more. The motivation and inspiration is there, and the confidence that you can because you did that one little thing.
One of my favorites to recommend to someone who works in an office and feels tied to their desk is when you go to the bathroom, go upstairs to another floor and take the stairs. Don't take the elevator. So you only have to go up one floor, but it's going further. And if someone stops you, you say, I'm going to the bathroom. I wonder why you're going all the way up there. But it's a great way to just add in some simple movement. And the more you drink water, the more you need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So the more
Right.
movement you get.
My favorite is when you're in the bathroom, whether you're using the restroom or you're brushing your teeth or washing your face or whatever it is, do squats, lunges, or toe raises. That's it. I'm not telling you to stay in there until you've, done 50. Do 10 squats. You're squatting for the bathroom anyway. It's the little things. Tell me, other than your son, can you give me an example of like a real success story from one of your clients?
Probably one of my favorites, and I shouldn't say I have favorites, but I'm still in contact with this client. She came to me in her 70s. She came to me because she had acid reflux that really bothered her, which is understandable. It's totally uncomfortable. But the more, because I take a health history, I want to know what they're dealing with, found out that she had had IBS since she was a teenager, 50 years. But for her, she didn't even mention it to me. It came from an answer to a question because it was her norm. It was just the way her body seemed to function. But digging into it, we found out, 70 years ago, the norm when you went to the doctor was you got an antibiotic. Whatever the disease was, she said, every time I went to the doctor, I got an antibiotic. And we did a comprehensive stool test, which is not the favorite thing for a prim and proper 70-year-old to do, but it was so insightful. It showed us very clearly what microbiome species she was missing that should be prominent in her gut. And so we knew this was the direction we needed to go, was to feed the right kinds of bacteria in her gut, but also inoculate and what I want to say, bring it back in.
Reintroduce.
Reintroduce, that's the word. Thank you. Within 2 months, she no longer had to carry her emergency bag. She was quite free of all of that. She was making plans for a European trip when COVID hit, which shut things down a bit. A couple of years after COVID, she did get to make that. She did a 5-week trip. She would have been afraid of just the air flight because of the long time in a plane. If you don't know, you can get to the bathroom when you need the bathroom. She wanted to travel so badly, but she was afraid of it. And she had a victory trip. And I celebrated as much as she did because she'd send me pictures every day from the things she was seeing because she said, you helped me get here. And that is just such a blessing to me. She did the work. I just educated and gave her guidance, but she actually made the changes that made it happen. I don't come in as the authority when I work with clients. I come alongside them. I tell them, I put you in the driver's seat. You are steering. You can press the gas and we can go faster. You can slow it down with the brakes. I'm just navigating and giving suggestions. We could go here or we can go here, which resonates with you. And together we make the progress.
That's fantastic. I love the story. Okay, so this episode is
Mhm.
recording at the beginning of September, but will be dropping right before Thanksgiving. But let's bring on the woman who works in nutrition and health and all the things. Talk to us right before we sit down for that 4,500 calorie ridiculous day. What kind of guidance do you give going into a holiday like Thanksgiving?
Don't totally restrict yourself so that you can't enjoy the holiday because it is a special time, especially if you're getting together with family and friends and that's special. But know yourself and what your challenges are. If you're one that seems to really overdo in that meal everyone's looking for a recliner after the Thanksgiving meal. The body says, slow down, I need to work on this. But if you find that you really struggle with overloading, put a smaller plate at your place setting on the table. It's okay if it doesn't match the rest of the pretty table arrangement, but a smaller plate will help you limit the portions you put on your plate and consume. The other thing is invite someone else from the group to go for a walk with you after the meal, because walking, simple exercise and movement will help your body improve digestion, and it will also help your body use a lot of the glucose spike that's going to come from the meal. And if you serve dessert later on, take another walk after that.
I took over Thanksgiving when we moved back to New York. My grandparents had already moved to Florida, and they were always the ones that hosted it, the whole family. So the first few Thanksgiving, it was just like us. But now we have a lot of people coming. But I took over Thanksgiving around the same time that I lost my weight. And I discovered for me that if I overeat in the middle of the day, it would set me up for, just like finding my way back to more leftovers. It didn't matter how sick I felt, I would just eat more. And that if the big meal of the day is at 6 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I will eat so well leading up into the meal. I will focus on fruits and vegetables while I'm cooking. I will have a little bit of protein. I might even have a little bit of grain, but I'm not going to be eating all day. And then dinner is over, dessert is over, and then everybody get the heck out of my house. Not everybody. And I have found that works. And here again, we say for me. And it has really helped me not do, the leftover thing at 9 p.m. I know it's different for everybody.
It is. So know your kryptonite, know the things that are a struggle for you, the things that you can't get away from. And Thanksgiving tends in each family to have a lot of traditions, doesn't it? We always have this dish. Are there ways that you can modify some of the ingredients to make it a little healthier? To add in another vegetable that's not mush, that's not whipped or mashed or loaded with butter and sugar and things. Add another vegetable that's going to give you some fiber to slow things down. But eating some raw vegetable as the meal starts, so make that the first thing on your plate that you eat, will give you almost like a mat on the bottom of your stomach that will slow the process of other food going into the small intestines. I really do a lot of teaching of the order in which you eat. Vegetables and protein first, and leave the grains and the carbs last. Because if you have the vegetables and protein into your stomach first, it's going to slow the glucose. So you can strategize even eating the things you traditionally ate, just eating them in a different order can really make a difference.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so this is the show about clutter.
Yeah.
And I try to warn everybody. I'm looking behind you and I see this beautiful home, well manicured hair. I see a woman who's got her stuff together nutritionally, but everybody has some form of clutter. So, Kelly, what is your clutter?
My desk.
Okay, tell me more about your desk.
My desk collects papers that I don't want to put them away because I will forget they're there, but I haven't found the spot in my calendar to deal with them as yet. And so that gets collected. I have been a clutter person for a long time. My dad used to look at my room and say, oh my goodness. Of course, my dad was a U.S. Marine, so he had a different standard. My mom grew up in the Depression. And so she didn't throw things away that might have a benefit at other times. And I'm learning to say, I can let this go and get some more when I need it later on. But I have to even deal with clutter in my refrigerator. How many of us have leftover container of sauce that came with a salad you got to go? That upper shelf to the left in my refrigerator has all the condiment stuff. And there's stuff in there that I don't remember when we opened it. And so there comes a point where it's just like, this has to be cleaned out. And I need to get rid of jams and jellies that are sugaring on the top because they've been in there so long. Just looking through, and if I can't remember what's in that jar and it's not labeled, it's time to get rid of it because I don't know what it is. That can be freeing for a lot of people. Another thing that I do regularly, because we eat a lot of raw vegetables and we cook the raw vegetables, we always have produce in our refrigerator drawers, but we will use a stir fry meal to clean out the odds and end veggies. And it's different every single time. You may love this combination, but we're never going to have it again because we won't have the same leftovers in that way. So instead of throwing them out, we just put it all along with, leftover piece of meat that's not enough for one person or not enough for two. We put that in a stir fry and mix it up and have a one dish meal. And then we can go refresh and clean the rest of it out and get fresh and new. So it's a way to clear clutter, but benefit from it in the process.
I love it. You've talked about two different forms of clutter that potentially could be, really rough to deal with, but also it's only clutter if it's clutter to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that pile of papers was holding you back from getting anything done, I would say we probably need to address this clutter.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just something that's waiting, not forever, for that time and you said schedule it. You put it in the calendar. You didn't say, well, I'll get around to it when I get around to it.
Yeah.
You said that it has to go on the calendar. And the thing about the fridge, I love this. Yes, on the stir fry for old vegetables, but you live in Louisiana, I live in New York, and it's soup season. But I have found something, and I didn't even realize this for so many years. When I started really addressing with my clients, clutter comes in more forms than, your grandmother's china, your jewelry, and the clothing in 4 different sizes, and it comes in all forms. I started looking at the kitchen. And we now have the emptiest full fridge on the planet. Like, people come over and they're just like, what? I throw away so little now that I've decluttered the fridge and the freezer. We have very little that we throw away, and we compost in New York City, so I do have a compost going, which also doesn't make me feel as badly if a vegetable turned and is not even good for a soup or a stew. I feel better because it's going in this thing, and it's going to, and it's going to go back into the earth, and it's going to create more fruits and vegetables for us in the future. I love thinking about that cycle, but I also don't like things going to waste. And as a result, we've saved money. And it has become easier to do now that we're empty nesters, having a fridge that you can open or a pantry or whatever, and you see all of the things that are right for you, that aren't hard to make a meal out of, aren't going to go to waste, and you will feel energized afterwards. I tell people this all the time, if you don't feel energized after the meal, ask yourself a question. Did I eat too much? Did I eat too late? What was I eating? What did I mix together? All of the things that you've been talking about. Kelly, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you being here. Before we finish, any last thoughts that you would want listeners to have about what you do and what you bring to the world?
Probably one of my goals in what I do is empowering, especially women, to speak up for their needs, to speak up for what makes a difference for them, and to be willing to look for the practitioner that will support them instead of just, I've had this doctor forever. If doctors do what they are trained in doing, if they don't have the training or the experience to suit your needs, then you need to find someone else that does. And sometimes I've had to encourage my clients, a joke and say, this is where my functional medicine teacher says, call 1-800, get a new doc, because maybe this person is not supporting what you need. But I know women who don't even go to a doctor to find the support they need. And suffer through menopause, suffer through perimenopause. More and more these days, women are speaking up and not suffering as my mom and my grandmother did through the change. So I love to help people discover how good they can feel in their bodies, but it starts by them choosing yes for me and being willing to make the effort to do it. It's worth it, really. It is.
I love that. I love that. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's been my delight.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media, and don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program to take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.